So firstly, Roy, thank you so much for taking your time out to join me today.
Thank you.
Cool. So you are the director of MENSCAPE, which specialises in counselling for young and adult men. And you have a strong background in working with a diverse group of men within a variety of settings as well. Additionally, your experience with youth offending teams and as a community and prison probation officer gives you deeper understanding into mental health challenges that men are experiencing today. Today, we're not just going to be talking about your journey, but we're also going to talk about the effects of counselling and how it contributes towards the mental well-being of men in today's culture. Firstly, so can you break down what it means to be an integrative counsellor?
Yeah, put simply, it's, to be able to use different types of therapies, modalities, approaches to ensure that you're using the best type of tools for clients. It is actually looking at the whole person as a client and, determining what the best approaches to use with them dependent upon the issues that they bring, to counselling.
Okay, so what different issues does a client need to display in order for you to understand what type of process or strategy you need to use with that particular individual?
I mean, for example, it could be something in relation to finding day-to-day life a struggle. And there could be a number of different challenges, like, for example, depressed, being anxious, low-level issues in terms of mental health, but, the impact can be quite great. So CBT or cognitive behavioural therapies would be sufficient. It's short-term pieces of counselling in order to identify patterns, unhelpful patterns of thought, and to work through those to understanding where some of these issues are coming from and to shift the way they think about themselves or the problem.
And in terms of the clients and the issues that they have, is there like a common environment, or do you see any common patterns in these individuals' environment that sparks these type of thought patterns which might lead to anxiety or depression?
Yes, there are a number of different things, because right about now there's quite a lot of stressors and difficulties that people are facing with day-to-day life, with employment. You've got issues like, the lockdown and the impact that had on people being in isolation, being in closer proximity to people, and unable to find, release or expression. That still has a lingering effect on people's mental health. But also what you have, just competing issues with work, with life, with family. Lots of young people are struggling with academic achievement, peer pressure, family issues, and how families relate to each other. And lots of people feel quite isolated and detached from a sense of future, and what that future looks like for them.
As men in particular, I tend to find that we take on a huge amount of responsibility, especially as we get older as well. And if you come from like a traditional background where you're taught that, what it means to be a man, you've got to take on this, you've got to take care of your family, work, finances, everything. Do you find that sometimes that pressure that men put on themselves can also lead to a breakdown, depression or anxiety or other forms of, mental illness?
It's interesting you specifically mentioned men. Yes, there are different challenges that men face, than for women. And, some of those pressures are about identity, belonging, connection. But there's a real issue in terms of what it means to be a man. We're having competing views and perspectives being fed into this particular issue, and I think there's some confusion, for lots of men, particularly young men, in terms of how to be, how to safely and to acceptably be a man. There are traditional notions of manhood in terms of providing, protecting, being strong and resilient, and all those things kind of fit into what they call a man box. In terms of all the stereotypical things that men are expected to be like or to be. Tough, resilient, lacking in emotion, and not presenting any vulnerabilities. And it's difficult for young men or men in general to sit within this box of expectation. And this box is reinforced by peers, it's reinforced by media, reinforced by films. So when men feel they can't be what's inside this box, it can lead to distress, it could lead to depression, self-loathing, anger, frustration, anxiety, low self-confidence, self-esteem, and questioning about who they are, what their purpose is, and whether or not they're succeeding or failing in life. And it's generally failing because they're not meeting the expectations that sit within this box.
What do you think is the social culture or today's culture has really kind of changed people's perspectives on what it means to be a man today?
Again, it's a competing ideology. I think men are caught in the middle because what we have is school and mainstream establishments now talking about hypermasculinity, talking about, men, being aggressive, men disproportionately abusing, women in relationships, and, being instrumental in all that's negative within society. It's that patriarchal system and the negativity that historically has been shown to be problematic, for women, but for families as well. But then, we have the opposite side where you've got, attempts to boost and to enhance and empower men, through taking responsibility for themselves, working out, being strong, being clever, being successful, having loads of money, having attractive women, and all the material wealth. And, there's a lot of criticism for people like Andrew Tate who kind of reinforces that particular way of life for young men. And the thing is, you've got these two opposing perspectives that are sending men different messages, and it's really confusing for them. And I think in some ways there could be a healthy blend of both, but society is quite polarized at this moment in time where there's this identity politics that's creating lots of confusion. So socially, we're moving in really difficult and challenging directions. And I think it's a bit different to how men grew up previously, because we didn't have all these uncertainties. We didn't have these looming challenges like war, like climate change, like the LGBT communities, and also how the shift from being a traditional man to a man that is more in touch with his feminine side. Being able to be vulnerable, being able to express his emotions. So it's a confusing picture, and I don't think that men, particularly young men, but men in general, are being aided to navigate their way through these turbulent and difficult times.
It's true. I think Men, there's so much information and conflicting information going on right now. Men don't know, not necessarily what it means to be a man, but they're not able to identify within themselves what it means for them to be a man. And in my opinion, correct me if I'm wrong, your version, what it means to be a man for you could differ to what it means to be a man for me. Just because it varies doesn't mean that I'm not a man, and doesn't mean that you're not a man. But as you say, because there's this like checklist of what it means to be a man, too much men are looking at this checklist and saying, oh, well, I haven't got that, I must not be a man. Then they all of a sudden fall into this state of anxiety or depression, or, you know, not knowing who they are. Do you find that that's kind of the reality of what's happening today?
Yes. I think men recognize that they're men, but it's the type of man. It's the quality and the desirability of you as a man. Society tells men that this checklist is very desirable, yeah, particularly to the opposite sex, and also to be perceived as successful within your peer group. So if men cannot achieve that, they see themselves as failures. And the feeling of failure then can lead to dysfunctional behavior. It could affect men in the way they relate to themselves, for one, in terms of falling into depression, anxiety, but also in relationships. It is a clear factor in how men perpetrate domestic abuse within relationships, in terms of, you know, how they are triggered by their partner's either words or attitude or actions towards them that challenge, you know, their perceptions of whether they sit in this box or don't. So it can be easy for men to feel emasculated, particularly if their partners don't seem to reinforce this set of behaviors and this set of characteristics that sit within the box. So you don't see me as a man, you're rejecting me, or your attitude towards me reinforces that I'm not that man.
Yeah. I watched something, so it's called Married at First Sight. I'm not sure if you've heard of that. And this might get a bit of backlash, I'm not sure, but it was quite interesting. There's this particular woman that was with this other man, and she was very independent, high earner, really successful within her career, knew exactly what she wanted. And he was not displaying some of the traits that she saw desirable within a man. Because she did not see those traits that she wanted, she started, you know, really kind of, well, she told him how she felt. She was honest, she was upfront with him. But in my personal opinion, she was a bit brutal in some of the stuff that she said as well. But one thing that I saw is that really got to the man, and it made him kind of question himself. In terms of his integrity and, you know, am I really a man? Now, the reason why I'm talking about this is because this is something that happens a lot in real life. It's not limited to that show. Women being independent I support it. You know, I believe they should be able to have this high level of independence, you know, equally paid. They should have their own businesses. They should be their own boss women. I am definitely in agreement with that. But what I'm not in agreement with is that when some women get to that position and then they see a man who's maybe not at that position, and they say, well, because now I'm the breadwinner, I'm the bread earner, I now don't value you as a man because you're not bringing home the bacon. And because now you're trying, and I see you having your times when you're down, or where you're confused, or where you're like, you know what, this is too much for me. Like, they use that as ammunition to kind of say, well, you're not a man because you should always have it, you know, put together. This external environment that's been created, not just by women, but by just different individuals within this world, is what is contributing towards men feeling broken. What advice would you give to women and anyone else who is seeing a man that's not necessarily at his peak performance? He is going through a period of challenge and change, but he's still trying. What can women and other individuals do to support that man and not crush his identity?
Well, I think the first thing I would say is that men feeling the way they do is generally linked back, to childhood and what messages they were receiving, but also some of the events, the life events, the traumatic events that they brought forward into their present adult state. So there's so many unresolved issues that are like the iceberg beneath the water, and it's really important to be aware of these issues beneath the water, particularly if they haven't been addressed. If there's been no healing, there's been no therapy, because at the top of the water, the bit that's sticking out of the water, you'll just see certain behaviours and characteristics, and ultimately this is what society, and individuals, people see and respond to, the bit above the water. So I think it's important for women, for society as a whole, to try and understand what may be going on. Because it's the overwhelming stress, frustration, fear, vulnerability trapped within the water that leads to displays of X, Y, or Z, in their adulthood, in their relationships, in society, in whatever environment you choose to pick. So men that have dealt with their issues or are working with those issues, understanding where these things are coming from, usually with therapists, are able then to be less triggered, by the perceptions of others. So, and I said that in order to address the question in terms of what can women do in order not to crush men. I think women can help and support men get the right type of interventions, therapies, in order to address those issues. And that's really, really important, because men who are feeling dejected, undervalued, disempowered, emasculated, really need somebody to care, to express their love and support and commitment, and to be encouraged to enter into therapy. And I think that's what I think we could all take from this. Society, yes, it's problematic, but it's really important for individuals within society, particularly loved ones and those that actually have those supportive roles, to help men to deal with their stuff. We can't expect women to solve the problem by speaking to us in a way that we want all the time. We have to take responsibility and do that work ourselves, but with the support of women, with the support of schools, colleges, universities, workplace, friends and family network, because everybody can play a role in helping men, be it young or adult, therapeutically, by being listening and being supportive and being encouraging.
True.